The second on another Trump impeachment over the U.S. Capitol insurrection. The president's words this morning only add to the urgency of the Democratic push now to remove him in his final days. In his first public appearances since a mob of his supporters ransacked the United States Capitol, the president said he wants no more violence. But missing was any contrition. Instead, the President of the United States defending the indefensible, saying his send-off to the march on that Capitol was pitch perfect.
What I said was totally appropriate. And if you look at what other people have said, politicians at a high level, about the riots during the summer, the horrible riots in Portland and Seattle and various other places, that was a real problem, what they said. But they've analyzed my speech and my words and my final paragraph, my final sentence, and everybody to the T thought it was totally appropriate.
Everybody, or just about everybody anyway, of course, says just the opposite. The president argues Democrats, not him, and not his election conspiracy lies, are the problem here.
It's really a continuation of the greatest witch hunt in the history of politics. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. This impeachment is causing tremendous anger, and you're doing it, and it's really a terrible thing that they're doing. For Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to continue on this path, I think it's causing tremendous danger to our country, and it's causing tremendous anger. I want no violence. Thank you very much.
Forgive me, I guess we should not be surprised, but this is Charlottesville 2.0 or Trump 8.0. Totally appropriate? That's what people are telling him? Who?
Well, he didn't list any names, notably, when he was talking about people who have analyzed what he said on the Ellipse on Wednesday compared to, of course, you know, what the actual reaction in real time has been, what we've heard from people in their own words, even Republicans, as Manu was just noting. But the president's behavior has become entirely predictable at this point when something like this happens, because we saw it with Access Hollywood, we saw it with Charlottesville, we saw it with the call with the Ukrainian leader, and now we are seeing it with this in the final days of his presidency. Really ending the way that it started, where the president, you know, this is likely something he probably would have tweeted a few days ago if he could still tweet, but he comes out, he cites anonymous people, says that they believed his call was completely appropriate. He takes no responsibility for what happened last week, even though members of his own White House and members of his own party have condemned the president, have criticized him over that, have said they will vote to impeach him, and even some of them have called on him to resign over the role that he played in what we saw happen on the Capitol last week. And so this is completely predictable from the president, but also we're seeing a lot of predictable behavior from Republicans too, we should note, because that was the first time we've heard from the president since Wednesday. He's going to Texas to visit the border wall. One person we should note that is flying with the president, John, is Senator Lindsey Graham, who of course gave that very dramatic floor speech last week on the Senate floor, saying that he had had a hell of a journey with Donald Trump, but given what had gone on, he said it was time to count him out because enough was enough. And now he is flying on Air Force One with the president.
Hard for the sycophants to quit, I guess. Get one more trip on Air Force One. So, Abby, Phillip, I want you to join the conversation. But before so, there are a lot of people out there, including people who voted for the president, who think that we are anti-Trump. No, we are pro-truth. We are pro-truth. And we need to hold the new administration to the same standard. The president said his speech was totally appropriate. He says people are telling him that. In that speech, he said he was worried about Mike Pence. He said we had to send up to Capitol Hill people to get rid of the weak Congress people. Specifically, in these remarks where he said so many people have told him we're totally appropriate, he talked about the end of his speech. Let's listen to the end of his speech.
We fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to the Capitol, and we're going to try and give. The Democrats are hopeless. They're never voting for anything, not even one vote. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue.
There is no cure for him. There is no cure for him. The question of the moment in American politics is how many Republicans will stand up and say, Mr. President, what you said at that rally was wrong. Mr. President, what your supporters did after that rally was reprehensible. Mr. President, you are accountable. And especially now, if you're going to say that, we have to vote to remove you or to impeach you and to forever scar you.
Unfortunately, I think the answer is obviously not that much. What Caitlin just brought up about Lindsey Graham traveling on Air Force One with the president is really emblematic of the problem here. People like Lindsey Graham, and there are many others around him, still think that they can reason with this president and they can guide him along into better behavior. But that's been the strategy all along, and it led to what happened last Wednesday. So there's a real problem with the Republican Party not being willing to stand up to the president, but also specifically to the president's supporters. Still, even to this day, not being willing to say the truth, which is that there was never a chance after the election was certified all the way back in December that the results could be overturned, that Mike Pence could defy his constitutional duties. Even to this day, many Republicans are still not willing to say that.
And to that point, Manaraju, Abby says even to this day, one of the things we watch as the Democrats go through these proceedings, number one on the resolution asking Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment, then in the impeachment debate, is what do the Republicans say? You noted at the top, Liz Cheney, the number 3 Republican, says that lawmakers in the House should vote their conscience. To me, that's a green light. That's almost a nudge for Republicans to stand up and vote to impeach the president. So we look every day, will Republicans, including those like Jim Jordan, who after the riots on the Capitol still voted to uphold a lie. They voted to support a lie. The president had a chance in court after court after court, and his case for fraud failed. So Jim McGovern, the chairman of the committee, tries to get Jim Jordan to say the election was free and fair. Listen.
I'm asking you to make a statement that the election was not stolen, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won fair and square.
He won the election because the way the process works is the last chance to object is January 6th.
And Congressman Jordan continued to say during that hearing that there were unconstitutional things in the states and that's all those Republicans were doing up on Capitol Hill. Again, court after court after court after court, and I could go on, threw all that out, and the Republicans. So we're not seeing a big change of heart from the president's most ardent supporters in the House.
No, absolutely not. They are defiant, even though they're facing an enormous backlash by corporate America, by some of their own supporters, by what they're hearing about from back home, about their role in this effort, and some of them even participating in that rally that eventually led to the violent mob that came here last week. So those Trump loyalists, they're not budging at all. They're going to stand by the president. The question is those Republicans in the middle. We mentioned some in the House. The question also will be when the Senate comes time to decide whether or not to vote to convict this president. The timing is complicated because this president only has a week and 8 days left in office here, and what will happen in terms of the Senate trial? Likely that trial will not begin until the early days of the Biden term, and then 17 Republicans would have to decide to vote to convict Donald Trump after he's left office in order to prevent him from running for office again. Uncertain, John, if we're going to get to 17 Republicans. Only 2 have called on him to resign. There are a number of others who are very concerned about his behavior, presumably could vote to convict. Will there be 17, though? That's going to be a question in the days ahead. And just notably, John, Nancy Pelosi would not comment just moments ago about when they would actually transmit those articles of impeachment over to the Senate. And that would actually prompt the trial to begin the next day. So some questions about how that process will play out here as Democrats move to impeach tomorrow.
And Caitlin Collins, finally, after days of them not speaking, and the president, of course, never called to check in on the vice president during that riot, some of his own supporters chanting that they were going after Mike Pence when they went into the United States Capitol. They finally did have a meeting yesterday. For those watching who think, would the vice president invoke the 25th Amendment, that appears increasingly to be no, right? To these two men, have they found peace, détente? How would we describe it?
I'm not sure I would describe it as peace, given that it's been less than a week since all of this transpired. And what we even heard from Senate Republicans was that the vice president was angry. That is basically never how the vice president has been described for the last 4 years and the way that he has navigated this relationship with Donald Trump. So it really does speak to how the vice president was feeling, given that he was dealing with everything, and also the president's responsibility and what happened last week. But this does mean, as we had reported over the weekend, we did not think this was likely, that the vice president is incredibly unlikely likely to actually take a step to galvanize the cabinet, invoke the 25th Amendment to strip the president of his power, no matter how much Democrats want to see that. But notably, of course, we still have never seen the vice president put out a statement saying, I'm not going to do this. Typically, that is something that you would see in the past. That is something that he has not done. We are told that is intentional by people around the vice president, that he hasn't actually put that statement out yet. But it is notable that they finally did speak after several days of silence, probably the longest stretch in their entire relationship that they had not spoken. But the other thing that we got from that is that the president is not stepping down. Despite these hopes that he is going to resign before his term ends a little over a week from today, they said they are going to serve out the remainder of their term. So Donald Trump is not going to be leaving office, which of course means neither is the vice president until next week.